All right, so we're talking about the most compelling story that your church has, the most compelling message in all of human history, and that is the gospel. Have you ever felt like this before, where you communicate and you communicate and you communicate, and then somebody comes up to you and it goes, "What do you mean? What time is the event?" Right? It's been the bulletin for 6 weeks. Yep. Is that only our church that's had that? You guys have had that before, right? There is just that idea is just kind of permeated, and it's for somebody who works in communications, who tries to get out in front of things and spend enough time out and planning and communicating and using every medium you can to communicate. A lot of times you still end up with this, right? And that's because of the massive amount of distraction. There are some things that we can do to help lead to this kind of confusion in our church, but a lot of times it's distraction. There was a study that was done in Israel. It was actually 6 studies that all confirmed the same output. And they would track and confirm that people who experience familiar routines actually recall them as being shorter, as a shorter passage of time than those of a non-routine. In other words, the phenomenon actually affects how people experience the passage of time. This phenomenon is called the familiarity phenomenon. That when you do things over and over and over again, you tend to zone out a little bit. Have you ever had this experience? I had this experience, and thankfully it hasn't happened lately, but there were times where I would be driving home from work, and I'd almost be home, and I realized, I don't think I was paying attention the last 10 minutes of this route. I know where I'm at. You ever had it? That's the familiarity phenomenon. And that happens in our churches. As we try to communicate, people become so familiar with how we communicate, where signs are placed, what things look like, that sometimes they walk right past it. And then they ask you, what time's the event? Wait a minute, you just passed 3 signs that said what time the event is, right? So what I want to help you do throughout our time to get together, and I want to be honest, I am not a sage. I do not know everything when it comes to church communication. We experiment. We continue to try to grow and create new ways to communicate with our church. And so if you have something to add during this breakout session, I don't want this to be just a monologue of me up here. If you guys have something to add, you have questions throughout this time, please do so, raise your hand or speak up. We'd love your input, because I think we're all kind of in the same boat when it comes to trying to do better when it comes to this. So what I want to help us think through today is this idea that every church can develop a communication blueprint by drafting the 3 spheres of our communication plan. So we're going to think through 3 things today that hopefully will be helpful for you as you try to move forward in your plan to communicate not just events, but the gospel message and the message of your church, which leads us to the first sphere, and that is the message. We want to communicate the message. So what I mean by the message is the vision and the mission of your church. This also would include some of the branding of your church. We've been given a clear mandate, a clear mission by Jesus Christ. The reason why your church exists, or should exist, is to make disciples, to train them and to send them out to go make disciples. That's the Great Commission that Jesus Christ has given to his local church. But your church seeks to do that mission in different ways. The way you do that in Gulfport might be different than the way you do that in Texas. And that might be different than the way that you do it in Findlay, Ohio, which is where I'm from. There are probably some very commonalities, similarities, maybe even some copy and paste things that work no matter where you go, because God's word works no matter where you go. But there are different ways that you do that, and different values that your church values and highlights to call people into that obedient action. The mission is what you do, and the values are how you do it. But when we're thinking through communication, specifically in our churches, whether it be communication about events, whether it be communication about a pathway, whether it be a communication about your call to discipleship, it all needs to be influenced by the message. Your message should drive your communication. It should be what drives you to communicate. It should also drive you to about what you need to communicate. And it should also help you prioritize how you communicate. There are different methods that people use when it comes to communication. Some are better than others. Let's just put it that way. For some people, your method of communication might be something like what I call the Wild West. It's last minute. It's Thursday, or for us it's Thursday. It's the last day. We have Friday off. Maybe it's Friday for you. It's a last minute meeting of what are we going to say from the pulpit this Sunday, right? Decisions are kind of governed by maybe emotion, maybe last minute, maybe your feelings. Maybe it's just the tyranny of the urgent. Like, we got to say something about this because this thing's coming up in 2 weeks and we haven't said anything about it, right? That might be how your communication plans out. It's kind of what I would call the Wild West. For some people, there's maybe an awareness rotation. I know in many bigger churches, maybe one like this, or maybe Canton Baptist, there's just kind of the rotation. You put everything on rotation because you want to highlight everything fairly, but you're not quite sure if you don't do that, something tends to dominate something else all the time, and then somebody gets pushed to the bottom, and of course feelings get hurt. Pastor, how come my didn't get announced from the pulpit? Hey, how come this didn't get to happen? And so some churches, they try to put things on an awareness rotation, and kind of the thought philosophy behind that is you're hoping that the right message gets to the right person at the right time. But hope is kind of the key word there. It's not exactly the best way to do things. It is a way to do it, however. Some people try to do like a color-coded prioritization. So they have a message their message is assigned a value by someone, and you kind of say, well, this is my this is red. This is red hot. This is priority number one. This has got to get out in the bulletin, or this has got to get out in our newsletter. It's got to get out on social media, and I got to do that right now. And so you try to create kind of like a pecking order. It's a little bit better. It's definitely better than the Wild West. But what I believe and what I think is the most important way to be able to communicate is what we would call mission or value-based communication. This is communication that's measured against the value and the mission of your church. Kind of you ask questions like, does this event help us accomplish our mission? Does this program fall within our values? What makes this approach so different from the approaches that we just said is that it changes the question from what is a good thing to promote into what is the best thing to promote right now. Also, what it does is it helps integrate the things that you're promoting into what it is, the values that your church has. So, as one marketing expert, Donald Miller, he said, good marketing is simply an exercise in memorization. What do you want your people to remember from Sunday, from Wednesday, from the email you send out, from the conversation, from the internal messaging, from the external messaging that you have? What do you want people to remember? The work of good marketing, he says, is to make the connection between any one event or an initiative to the broader vision of your church, to the value of your church, to what you want your people to do, who you want your people to become, if that makes sense. So let me give you an example in case I'm losing you here. So at Trinity, we really utilize the language of taking your next step. That's what we do. We say it in all of our announcements. We have it on all of our external and internal communications. We're always calling people to what their next step is. Now, we have what we lay out as the pathway. We just recently put in an entire wall in our lobby that highlights this. But we want people to take their next step. And so all the communication that we do, whether it be from the stage, whether it be in our videos, whether it be in our Sunday school classes, whether it be signs, posters, stuff that goes out of our building, we're always challenging someone to take their next step. We even in our events, the reason why you come to an event, the reason why you participate, the reason why you invite someone is because you're inviting them to take their next step. We try to do as much as we can to tether everything back to the mission and the values that we have. We want people to take steps with their walk with the Lord, and so we try to tether all of that back. So your message, whatever that message is, now I can't tell you what your message is. Though I think the Bible should have something to say about that. But how you activate your people to do that message, to obey that message, that's going to be unique for your church. So you need to think through that. But that message should drive how you communicate and what you communicate. It should also drive your visualization. Do we have any creatives in here? Anybody who likes to create things? Artists or influencers or video people? Anybody like that? A couple people in here? Some creative people? Usually the creative people don't like to raise their hands, right? Yeah. I'm not that creative. And then everyone's around them. When
people know it, then they
right?
won't use it.
Everyone around them is like, that's the most creative person I know. Why don't they have their hand raised, right? Yeah, your message should drive what you visualize, what people can see both from you and around your ministry. A great way to refocus attention on the vision and the mission is through visualization and what I call periodic refreshing. We'll talk about that here in a second. But what I just showed you here from our church, we try to visualize as much as we can what we want or what we're wanting people to do, what action we're calling them to do. Now, for some of you, there are some great tools out there. I don't have time to talk about everything that has to do with this. But you may have some very talented people maybe in your church that can help you with this. Maybe if you're struggling with the visualization part of your ministry. Branding is one of those things where you can dive into this all day long, and I know that sometimes when people see this, all they see is dollar signs, but there is something to be said about how you visualize things at your church. I was just talking with you, Pastor, about the green wall in the back. That stands out, right? And I'm asking, what's the purpose of that? That drew my attention. I'm sure that draws attention to many people, right? As I walk into your lobby, the clean lines, the arching ceiling, the logo up there, all those things, they make a difference. Some people might think, well, we just need four walls and God's word and we'll be good. And that's not wrong, but there could be more to that. And especially with the world that we live in, we are highly visual people. Have you ever noticed, everywhere you go, people are always looking at something, right? Yes. They always have something that they're looking at, right? And when you try to dive into, we're going to talk about social media here in a little bit, when you try to dive into that pool of social media, one of the best things that you can do is to draw someone's attention. That's the way you get them. You hook them into your message. So designing has a lot to do with that. Branding, when we're talking about branding, we're talking about your local church branding. It's more than just communication. It's more than just words. It's more than just color schemes, even though those are important. Colors, photos. You can do color-based stuff. You can do photo-based things, depending on what your strategy is and what you're trying to highlight. But it's more than just words on the wall. What you're looking for is consistency and connectivity. You want people's attention to be drawn, but you have a message to communicate when you're trying to visualize things. You maybe been to places where sometimes too much visualization can be a bad thing, right? There's so many messages that you get overwhelmed. And the very first thing that your mind wants to do is block all of it out. You can go too far when it comes to visualization. So, thinking through your church, thinking through how you communicate, walking in sometimes with fresh eyes is very helpful in thinking through designing of your communication. Where are the places that people linger? Where are the places that people pass by? Where could use a touch of visualizing your message? Refreshing through what's called a brand curve is also something that you might want to consider. A brand curve is something that can be helpful for your ministry, for even something as broad as your church or your church logo, to something very specific as Sunday school class names or ministry names or the names of some of your ministries. humans are incredibly adaptable. When it comes to how we move through buildings and how we move through areas, I already mentioned before that familiarity effect. What happens with the human mind is that when we see or we hear or we experience something, every time we do that, it has less of an effect on us. Every time you see a photo that was heart-wrenching, it becomes less and less heart-wrenching. Every time you hear a message or a statement that's thought-provoking, every time you hear it, it becomes less and less thought-provoking. That's just part of how God's designed us. We are incredibly adaptable. But that means that the messaging that you have and the branding that you have, we're talking visualization here, your people are weekly becoming inoculated to, okay? They are quickly becoming adaptable to your message in a bad way. They're learning how to block it out. Yeah.
Good question. So, and if you're going to answer this later on, you can say so, but
okay.
What do you feel is like the period of time that sets in? So
that's a good question. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. Okay. I think for every person it's different.
Sure.
I think in my opinion, the younger the generation goes, the more highly adaptable they are to certain things. But with that being said, I've often said that some of the older generations are some of the most adaptable generations that exist. When you think about the idea of the older generation or somebody who's gone from a rotary phone to a dial phone to numbers to a corded phone to a cordless phone to a mobile phone.
That'd be my generation. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, seriously, yeah. I mean,
and then you have some of the younger generations who have had kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
There's adaptability to different things for different generations. So that's a good question. But
I mean, I guess my question really is kind of like a bulletin, right? So,
yeah.
So if you design a bulletin a certain way, for your church, is there a pattern that you follow? Like, hey, let's change this up over, every 4 months or twice a year, or what is it?
Yeah. And so, and I think there's a balance in between that, because if you're going to try to do something like a brand curve with your bulletin, right, like you're going to change it, too much change can create too much chaos. Sure. We are highly adaptable, but we do not like change.
Right.
And it doesn't, young or old, we don't like change. And so thinking through that for your church, I think will be important. We try to change things up no more than usually, the big things, no more than once a year, to be honest. We do, with our bulletin, that's a good thing that you can think through even for us. We have not done any kind of refresh on our bulletin for a while. Yeah. We do change the graphic portion of it, right, but as far as it's set up, how you read through it, it has historically been the same.
Sure.
So that is a good thought. But when it comes to that, I think that you will have to learn your people, and you will have to learn your people in that area of subject. But that's a great question. So this idea of a brand curve is what is it? So it's a brand curve is your base brand intersecting with current creative trends to create what we would call a novel brand expression that's still anchored in the core elements. So I did not print this out for you, but if you want, there is some great resources on prochurchtools.com. It's a guy that's out of, I think he's in Canada now, but Brady Shearer is a guy that has a lot of good thoughts on communication, church communication. And some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff is free, some of it, it's behind a paywall, but the brand curve sheet kind of walks you through how to do one visually and with colors. We kind of did something like that when I got to Trinity. So Trinity had a historic logo, and we just kind of refreshed the logo a little bit and made it a little bit different. We took the the history of it, the dome shape that's part of our church, and we're the only domed church in our town. And people know when they go by, they say, "Oh yeah, the dome church. Yeah, we know where you are."
The rock out in front.
And we got the big rock anchored to the rock.
That mosque. Right?
Right. Yeah, we're ready for a mosque to move in. So we took a little bit of the historic logo and we updated it a little bit. There are sometimes. And it's going to be, every church is going to be different, right? Mm-hmm. If you try to do something like this, there may be some churches you might get a lot of pushback because of the history of the church. Others you may not. But doing it, I think, tastefully and doing it subtly is part of what helps create that little bit of brand curve. Now, I wouldn't encourage you to change your church logo every year, all right? Some things probably do need to stay the same, and that's why much of what our refresh is didn't change a whole lot, just kind of updated it, made it a little bit more modern. But this is just something you can do to help with the visualization of your message, okay? So let's talk about the second sphere. Once again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Let's talk about the means, okay? We're gonna camp here a little bit because this is we're going from more theoretical to a little bit more practical as we walk through this workshop. Let's talk about the means. When we talk about the means, we're talking about the communication channels that you use. We'll talk about a few of some general rules for communication and some best practices. All right? Your church has a collection already. Your church already has a collection of communication channels that you have been using for years. These channels range from on-stage announcements to your bulletin, to any kind of signage you use, all the way to what you're hanging in the bathroom stalls, right? And online. Anywhere communication exists, anywhere there's a message going out, that is what we would consider a channel. And part of the hard work that goes into the communication of your church is managing all of these channels and doing so in a way that maximizes their productivity and minimizes how much they're distracting from what you're trying to do, okay? So this is just kind of a quick list of maybe some of the communication channels you might be using right now. Your weekend announcements, so your announcements that happened on your weekend events. So that would be stuff coming from the platform. Pastor's getting up and he's talking about, or he's promoting, or one of the staff members is promoting an event, or a ladies is promoting a ladies event, or a Sunday school class is promoting a Sunday school activity. Any kind of weekend announcements. Now, I will say this, when it comes to weekend announcements, less is more. Less is more. Sometimes those can drone on and on and on to the point where everyone's forgotten everything you said already, right? And they come back. What time was that event again? Some of your pre and post service. Some of your pre and post service slideshows. So maybe the slideshow you have going before or after service. We have these slideshows in our ministry, both in the auditorium and then all throughout our building. Maybe your emails or newsletters that you're sending out. A printed bulletin, your marquee, if you have a digital sign outside or your lobby, the lobby screens, the printed calendar, if you have one of those, your website, that's great for first impressions, your website calendar, social media, any paid ads that you're doing, some of your organic search, how are people finding you online, if people search the name of your church or Baptist church near me and your church comes up, there's going to be some representation of your church immediately. What does that look like? We need to manage that. Any kind of mailers you do, individual programs, information, the bathroom stall signage, your greeters, your special event stuff, your street corner banners. So that would be anything you have out by the street. A lot of times we use those things for things like VBS and other events. Your parking lot poles, those are a great way for you to be able to market a message, and even some of your campus signage, directional signage, all that. There are a lot more other channels that you can create and have been created. So this is not an exhaustive list. But this may be some things that we're reminding you, we do that here. What you're going to need as far as kind of coming up with a blueprint or a plan to manage these kinds of things is you need to identify where are the areas of our communication? Where are we communicating right now, and how are we communicating in these areas? Have you ever sat down and just thought through, what are all the ways that we communicate? That is a great exercise to do with your team. Think through, what are all the different ways that we communicate the message of this ministry? And write them all down. Capture them. Who's in charge of those channels? You would be surprised. We did this exercise, and we found that thankfully they were historic and maybe abandoned, but there were people who had created channels for our church that were not being monitored by our church. And so we have to you have to wrap your head around, how are we communicating, and what are we using to communicate? What are we not using? And what should we use? What can we use to be able to communicate this message? Let's talk a little bit about the big one, okay? The big one is social media. We're going to camp here for a little bit, all right? Social media has become a pioneering way to communicate the church message. Now, the secular world's been using social media for a long time, and churches have tried to jump on board. But more and more, the church has tried to push its message beyond its building, if that makes sense. We have tried to, as churches in general, make a dent into the social media world, into the world of the internet. So, when we think through social media, I want to share with you just a few rules and best practices. If your church has not tried to engage in the social media world, let me challenge you to begin to explore that for your church. There's a lot that can be done for a little bit of effort, okay? And there are a lot of great tools, AI tools, and others that can make your job a lot easier. For some of you that have tried to manage social media pages, you know how much time it can take and how much effort it takes to continually produce content. Well, there are some great tools out there that can be a great help to you. But let's think through, what's the best ways, if we are going to wade into this, or you already have a social media presence, what are some of the best ways that we can utilize this to get the message out? Well, first of all, is what I would call the 1 in 5 rule. The 1 in 5 rule. The 1 in 5 rule helps you as a social media presence to not just make your social media presence another billboard. Okay, billboards have a place, and communication of events and graphics that tell you, hey, this is at this time, or hey, you should join this thing. Those billboards are important, but people tend to scroll right through your billboards because people aren't looking to be advertised to when they go on social media. There's a lot of that out there already. So what is the 1 in 5 rule? Well, the 1 in 5 rule states that no more than 20%, or 1 in 5, of your posts should be promotional posts. So that means of every 5 posts you make, only 1 of them should really be an advertisement for your event or ministry or whatever it is that you're trying to advertise. Why? Because when people go on social media, people are looking to engage. And people don't engage with promotional products like they do organic content. I'm going to assume, probably by the demographics in this room, everyone in here is on some sort of social media place. When you scroll through, do you normally stop at the sponsored ad, or do you normally stop at the guy who's got cool glasses on and he's talking into his phone, right? He's very organic, right? Yeah, maybe not AJ, right? Because you know him. But most of the time, when it comes to clicks, when it comes to impressions, when it comes to interaction, most people do not interact with promotional material. They interact with organic content. So, one way to help the algorithm for your social media presence is to make your posts more interactable. The more people that interact with your post, whether that be a like or a comment or a share, or whatever, however else you're doing things on social media, a heart, whatever a response they can give to you on that form. That is going to help your posts, and that's going to help your account in general be promoted more through the algorithm. The more people scroll past your things, the farther you tend to get bumped down in any given social media platform. The next kind of best practice is what's called the no weeks off rule. So the no weeks off rule kind of couples along with the third rule, which is consistency equals momentum. The no weeks off rule, and this can be somewhat daunting, is the idea of every week you need to produce content for your social media account. If you leave your social media account barren, what it's communicating to people is that there's nothing going on. We have noticed in our church, the majority of people that come into our building have already visited us in several online platforms. They've already checked out our social media pages, they've already checked out our website, and they're now coming in the door. So what we've noticed is that our website and our social media pages are really the front door to our ministry. Most churches, they spend a lot of time and effort trying to make their lobby and their front areas beautiful. Well, we need to put that same effort and thought into our social media pages and our websites, because those have now become the front door for many of your guests. So don't take a week off. Produce more content, okay? Third one, social media is about momentum, and consistency is what produces momentum on your social media account. Being consistent. I provided you with a one sheet that is a social media page. If you didn't get one, please grab one before you go. This is just kind of a rule of thumb. This is something that we've been using in our church to help us build momentum on our social media accounts. And this is the one-page social media calendar. It gives you 6 days of ideas of things that you can produce with some relatively less effort than what has been in the past to produce content for your social media pages. Whether that be, if you're on Facebook or X or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, I would encourage you to explore the ones that are right for your ministry. But this will give you kind of just maybe a great thought, a great starting point to be able to produce content for your church in a way that produces variable content, different kinds of content, and more content than just advertisement. More content than just, hey, our ladies' tea event is on Saturday at 7. You should come. It's called Flowers for Her. Whatever it is. Whatever the advertisement is that you're trying to advertise, right? This helps you produce some more content. And as you produce more content, as you become more consistent, the algorithms in many of these social media platforms will push you up towards the top of the feed. Have you guys noticed that when you go through social media, if you've been on social media maybe for a longer amount of time, that you never tend to see, if you have 300 friends, let's say on Facebook, you never tend to see much of those 300 friends and what they're posting? You tend to see a lot of sponsored ads for gumbo or something. If you're in this area for any kind of event, and maybe there's events, or maybe it's just some random people. Like, I don't even know these people. Yeah. Why am I seeing their reels and their videos? That is because the algorithm on social media has changed over the years from just what your friends are doing and pictures of their plates to what we're in what's called the exploration age of social media. And so what there is going on any of your social media devices is trying to match your interests with the content that's on its platform. So you don't have to be friends or have to like certain pages to get that content anymore. That can happen for your ministry. As you continue to produce more and more content, the algorithm is being fed more and more momentum from you, and you will begin to show up in other people's feeds that have no idea that BBC or whatever church you are exists on your road. But they will, because they'll begin to see your content. What's on here, as you'll see on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there is a plug here for what's called social sermon, or this is mostly what's called sermon clips. So sermon clips are still really the number one. They've been around for several years, but they're still the number one engaging content that churches can produce on a social media platform. And that is a short reel or a short video of maybe your live stream or maybe your pastor giving a quick 30-second to 3-minute challenge about something, and it's something that you can use if you're already live streaming your events, especially on Sundays, on Wednesdays, or whatever it is, whenever you guys do your live stream. You're already producing content. So you can take that content, throw it into a tool, or if you're creative, you can do it yourself, and create a sermon clip. So a sermon clip is, if you've never used one before, is a standalone little mini message. Like I said, it's usually about 30 seconds to 3 minutes. It's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have to be tethered to any kind of like date or calendar. Sometimes when people see this, they're like, oh, I don't know if I can get all that done in 1 week. I got all these other things I got to do. Well, here's the good thing about the age of exploration that we're at with social media. You could produce a clip of a sermon that your pastor preached 3 years ago. But if the content's great, people will engage with it. If it's thought-provoking, if it's relatable, if it's controversial, people will react to it, and people will see it. You can stay up to date, but see, that's not how the algorithm always works. You could post something this week, and people may not see it until a couple weeks from now, but people will engage with it. So you don't necessarily have to tether those sermon clips to, like, it's got to be from last week's sermon. You can do it. You can do it from any sermon. It's accessible to those who both know and who don't know Jesus. So it would be important that when you do sermon clips to make it, as I mentioned, something that's relatable, something that's it can even be something that's controversial, maybe something that's thought-provoking. It doesn't just have to be like a nugget of theology. It can be something that can be relatable to somebody who's not part of your church. Because remember, people who see these sermon clips may not just be the people who liked your Facebook page or liked your Instagram account. They're going to be people who are getting fed this through their algorithm. The more you reach broadly, the more you can reach locally. So a lot of times social media is a numbers game. So a lot of people are thinking, well, why do I need to produce this content? Like, who cares if somebody in Utah sees, my reel, or some guy out in California? I mean, they're far away from my church. What does that matter? Well, a lot of social media is a numbers game. So if you can have 1 million impressions, and you're only able to get 10% of those people in your church, well, you might need to build a new church building, right? So it is a lot of a numbers game. So try to push broadly when you try to post and you're using social media. It's not just you're not just trying to affect the people around you, if that makes sense. You are, but the more you reach globally, broadly, the more you can reach locally as well. As more interest is given to any specific reel or any specific social media post, it will show up more in everyone else's accounts as well. Platforms to communicate your church's theology. So these little mini sermons are platforms for you to be able to speak into your community. Your teaching, whether it be theology or leadership or your everything that people see in this video, you're communicating about your church. They're looking at the background of your platform. They're looking at how your pastor is dressed. They're looking at the message that you're communicating. This is something that this tool, if I can say it this way, is a great tool to use to be able. It's like a little mini commercial for your church. Okay. The last one is optimizing your social accounts for search. So a lot of times people, when they're looking for an answer to a question, sometimes people will Google it, but the number one place where people are going to find answers right now is actually YouTube. I don't know if we knew that or not, but YouTube is the number one search engine right now for people who are looking for answers for things. So I don't know if your church has considered a YouTube channel, or if you maybe even live stream, but bolstering up your searchability for your message. There are people who are so when you're thinking about social media, a lot of times we're thinking outbound. We're thinking we got to push our message out. We got to put out the graphics. We got to put out the reels. We got to put out the information. We got to get the message out there. Get the message out there. Get the message out there. But a lot of times in doing that, we create titles. We create very specific content that is not searchable. It's not something that's going to come up in a search. So if I'm struggling with my marriage, right, and I'm looking for, what should like my number one priority be in marriage? Well, for the most part, most churches, what I've seen, and something that we've had to try to get better at too, is that when you put content out there, you put the title of the message. Maybe the message has to do with maybe what your number one priority should be in marriage, but your title of the message is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, right? It's not searchable. It's not something that's going to come up on a search. So when you're producing content, you need to think through, how can someone find this if they were searching for it? Don't just think of outbound behavior, right? Think about inbound behavior. Think about, if I'm looking for content to know something about your church, how would I find it? If I'm looking for content about my marriage or about any of the answers that the Word of God gives us, right? For how to live life, how would I find those things? All right? So communication is a two-way street. And so helping to align all of the communication that you do from your church, I would provoke you to consider something of what we would call the central hub. All right? For our church, we use it's literally just a web page on our website. We call it Info Hub. It's a single destination for all the calls to action in our church. A lot of times we can create a lot of chaos in our church when we try to call people to action.
Is this in-house you're talking
about? So I'm switching gears here a little bit. Sorry, just for the sake of time, I'm trying to get through all this. But when you're thinking about communication in-house for your people, it doesn't even necessarily, I guess I answered that a little bit prematurely. It doesn't even necessarily have to be just in-house. It could be even online. Yeah. Hey, if you want to do this, go to Info Hub. Go to mytbc.info, would be our website, and you'll be able to find more information about it. Calling people to one destination increases the likelihood that they will respond. Okay, the principle is less calls to action times less chaos equals more responses. You want people to respond, and you want everyone to be able to know how to respond immediately. Sometimes we try to say things like, hey, if you want to do that, check the bulletin. Hey, if you want to do that, go talk to Pastor AJ. Hey, if you want to do that, talk to Pastor after service. Hey, if you want to do that, there's a table in the lobby. Go over there. There's all these calls and different calls to action. And what we tend to do, without even meaning to do it, is we create a lot of chaos, and people don't know how to respond to what you're calling them to do. So, one thing you might want to consider is a central hub that can align all of your communication. All right, for the sake of time, any questions? All right, let's move on here real quick. The last one I want to talk about just briefly is management, okay? This is the planning and executing. Like I said, we're kind of going from theoretical to a little bit more practical, okay? The last thing we want to think through when we're thinking through our communication blueprint is the management. How are we going to plan? How are we going to execute the communication? This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where the job gets done. First of all, you might want to consider something like a planning template, okay? There are all kinds. Your church can invest money in apps and software that's out there that helps communicate and helps your staff be on the same page. There's a lot of great stuff out there for team building and team communication. But I'm going to be honest with you, a good place to start if you're trying to wade into this is the good old trusty spreadsheet, okay? It's something that you're already using, you're probably already paying for, and it's something that you can use very easily. And it's also easy to train other people to communicate on this. This is just an example of one kind of way to communicate. But you think through, what is the event that we're having? What kind of value is it trying to push? What are For us, it would be what step. We're thinking through next steps. So what step is this promoting? Yes.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
Is this something you created?
It's not something I created, but it's something I can pass along to
Okay.
you, as a resource if you want. Yeah, I'll just get your email or something afterward, and I can send you a copy. Not something I created, not unique to me. What is the priority of it? When do we need to get this message out? When is the date of the event? When are we going to talk about it on stage? When are we going to put it in our newsletter? When are we going to put it in our bulletin? When are we going to put it in social media? And so you just list out all your different ways of communication. How are you going to do it? When you're going to do it? What ministry does it highlight? Who's the leader of it? Is it Michael Scott? Please don't let it be Michael Scott, right? What are any kind of notes, right? Are you looking at me like you're...
Who's Michael Scott?
Is there any Office fans in here? Okay. So, defining your strategy and your system is going to be part of like how you actually are going to execute this process. It's okay to have the theory crafting and like, okay, well, I know what I need to do, but how are we going to communicate this? Because many of us are we're not islands to ourselves, right? We're working in a network of other people. Depending on the size of your church, you may have multiple departments that you're all trying to communicate messages. Okay, how do we synchronize this? And how do we utilize all of our areas of communication, all of our channels? How do we utilize those in a way that makes sense? All right. You need to think through probably, I know this is getting a little bit into the weeds maybe for some of you, but thinking through what we would call lead times. How much time do you need in advance before you communicate something? Okay, so I'm speaking from as a connections pastor. If you're the person in your church who handles this, you will want to know some information ahead of time because you're trying to communicate. You're trying to align all of this communication together. A good idea might be creating a lead time. So if you need a graphic for something, you need to let me know X amount of weeks beforehand. Don't ask for a graphic for Sunday, right? Or you're going to get something from PowerPoint or something I Googled and I stole from another church, right? You are going to want to communicate to them. Do you want something updated? When do you want your event communicated? Does it need to be on the website? Do you need to print stuff out? Are we printing things out? Like you're going to need to create this. And this is just an example, but you're going to need to think through on your team. How much time do I need in advance for me to effectively communicate and put your announcement into our communication plan, okay? Now, here's one thing, and I skipped it. I probably shouldn't have. But there's a bonus rule I didn't write down, and that's what we call the 50% rule. The 50% rule is basically what this is. It can work wonders for cutting down the amount of announcements that you feel like you have to make on any given Sunday morning, okay? And the 50% rule is this: if your church is sharing, and the reason why it exists is because if your church is sharing multiple announcements on all of your different channels, and it's not applying to the majority of your communication, what you're actually doing is you're training the people, you're conditioning the people in your church to ignore the things you're saying because the majority of the things you say are not for me. That is something that I think we all struggle with. But trying to get the right message to the right person at the right time is really the gold that we're digging for. Okay, so the 50% rule is this: if what you're saying does not have any kind of applicable effect to 50% of the people in that room, okay, don't communicate it there. Okay, so if you're sending out an email for kids ministry, you're starting a new check-in system, don't send it to your empty nesters class, right? It doesn't affect them. So don't send out a whole email blast to all of your church if your church doesn't have, it's mostly senior citizens, okay? That might have been a bad example, but if the message you're giving, okay, if the message you're telling, don't talk about a youth event, right? If most of the people in the room aren't youth people or parents of youth people, they don't need to hear that message. So don't think that you have to communicate every message on every channel. Utilize your channels the way they ought to be utilized so that it will have maximum effect. Okay? That's the 50% rule. Okay? One thing it'll do too is it'll help you stop being the bad guy, especially if you're the leader of an organization. Okay? When somebody comes to you and says, Pastor, can you make this announcement? Can you do this? And you can say, this doesn't affect the greater majority of the people. There might be a better place for us to make that announcement. And it needs to be this location or that location. It needs to be in this channel or that channel. It doesn't need to be on every channel every time. Okay? So back to lead times. It's important for those of us who work through that and to think through that to give yourself the time to be able to communicate effectively. Another thing that I can kind of end here with is for some of you this might be very overwhelming. I know it's overwhelming for me right now. I'm kind of the only one in our church doing this, and thankfully we've been able to work on our weekly schedule so that I have more time to do this. But for some of you, you may not have time to do this all by yourself. Maybe you don't necessarily even have the skill or the training to execute all of this by yourself. Maybe what you need to think through is building a team. Building a team of people who can help you communicate and manage these channels in a very effective way. Some positions you might want to consider is maybe a writer, somebody who's good, who's a wordsmith, who can help you out in thinking through how do I communicate this message. You know what needs to be said as far as the bones of the message, but somebody who can help you flesh out that message. Maybe somebody who can create content. Maybe you got somebody who's a very talented artist or somebody who's good at creating content. Let them release them to create content and then utilize some of that content. Maybe somebody who can help you on the website, on your website, or as a graphic designer or videographer. Maybe these are all important positions to play in this communication team. Is there people in your church that can help? You can give ministry away. People that you can help to help create these things for you. I will say that as far as the communication team is concerned, it's probably one of the hardest teams to build, because there's not really any natural rally point for that team. Choir meets in a choir room, right? The youth leaders meet in the youth room. The Sunday school teachers might have a Sunday school leader strategy meeting you do once a month, right? There's no rally point a lot of times for a communication team. So building the team, you might need to do in-house. Maybe you need to bring some people out of house, and maybe they need to come into the office and maybe volunteer some of their time during the week. It's like I said, it's not the easiest team to build, but sometimes you need it because if you want to get that most important, compelling message that Christ died for us and rose again, and all who place their faith in that message by His grace are saved. And so we're so thankful that God has done that in our lives, and that's what we're doing, right? A lot of my assigned topic feels a little bit secular, but I'll be honest to you, the message that we have is what we're driving for. It's the driving part of what we do. We want the message of the gospel to go out, and so let's be the best kind of communicators we can be. And we're praying for you as you think through your blueprint, all right?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a word of prayer. We'll be done. God, thank you so much for the opportunity we've had to think through this. Bless our lunchtime. Thank you for those who came. And Lord, I just pray that you would help bring some clarity. Maybe some of the things that have been shared today would help them move forward in communicating the most important message of all, that Jesus came to die for sinners. Lord, I pray that you would bless the remainder of our day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.